Hey friends and family, how's it going? This is Chris here. I'm just over here on the lawnmower. I'm gonna have a bunch of compost back here. I've been taking a little bit from the compost piles. I have a couple of them, one by the greenhouse down there, one over here by the chicken coop. And I'm distributing the compost right along this cactus. Okay, so planted this cactus a couple years ago, and it's been rooted in pretty good, but the horse likes to come in, and the goats, and eat the grass all around the young cactus, and then they trample the cactus. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just take those paddles that they break off and stick them in the dirt and grow new ones. But they continue to trample the cactus, and this is a food source. This is Nopales. This is something that, well, it's also a barrier, because people hop that fence, run across the lawn, hop this fence, and then they'll go and hop that fence over there to those neighbors, because they have a lot of things that are interesting to people that are on meth. So I heard that, and so I was like, okay, I'll put natural barriers up. So I lined that fence line with beehives, put the horse paddock over there, you know, connected to the barn, and everything's funneled into this middle area pretty much where our dog is at the house, so we can kind of be aware of that. The idea was to grow this edible cactus. It gets very large, you know, 10 feet tall, turns into a solid wall. And I don't really like fence lines anyway. So, you know, I cultivated this tree, I pruned this tree for the neighbor after the storms. 2016 or 2017, we had some nasty hurricanes blow through here, knocked down a bunch of trees. You know, the tree by the lawnmower is a good example down there. It blew over a lot of trees. Anyway, back to the cactus. So I planted all this cactus, and so you can see here, the rest of this area is what I have to do left. Put a little elderberry in here, and start popping little elderberries intermixed in, maybe some young oak trees, maybe a couple of fruit trees mixed in here. But I'm using this compost, and boy, ever is it the best compost. Wood chips blended with fertilizer, well, horse manure, fertilizer, and chickens scratch around in it, and then I throw sand on top, and it mixes in. Worms get in there, and it just breaks down to this beautiful loam. So this compost is going to keep water retention in the soil around these cacti, and it's going to create a very suitable, you know, soil type with lots of nutrients, lots of nitrogen. Not that it necessarily needs lots of nitrogen, but it's going to fertilize the soil and then trap moisture in, because it acts like a sponge. So when it's really, really dry and hot out, it's a barrier. It releases from the top, and when it rains or when it's real foggy, it absorbs that moisture, and then it's kind of like a time release for moisture, and it keeps the soil and your trees and plants watered even when, you know, you don't even have to water it. So even in the middle of the summer, if you were to take a, you know, little small garden trowel and dig down, you'll see that there's soil moisture down low, you know, or very shallow in the soil. So that's what we need. So also, as a side thing that's going to happen, is I could have just put it immediately around the cactus, but I didn't. I went all the way to the fence line. So by getting rid of all this grass, it's really sweet, wet grass, little shoots, and the horse really just loves eating it. By taking out that incentive for her to trample the cactus, I'm hoping that she won't trample it, because there's nothing on the other side of it to eat. It's just all compost. So that's the second reason. And the third reason is having a big wide area is better than a thin little strip. So it'll maintain a lot more of that moisture in the soil because it's covering a larger area. So it's creating more of a miniature biosphere. This land was graded flat. So the previous owner here, old Billy Bosworth, I think was his name, he loved to have everything nice and uniform and flat. The old barn, we had to rebuild the barn. This grade went right up against the barn. Everything was just smooth and well graded. But I like swales. I like things that catch and trap water. I like things that grow. So I've kind of changed the land use. And instead of grading off the topsoil, I'm creating topsoil. I'm creating microbiospheres. I'm creating little hedgerows. Pisses me off to no end that the dogs do this, but in about 10 minutes I'm going to throw a bunch of compost in that hole, and it'll already be that much down in the soil. So as long as she's not wrecking my little elderberry bush, which I grow lots of elderberries, then I'm okay with that. So I'm almost done. I probably have another hour or two. I'll have this whole thing composted. I didn't want to invest so much compost into this cactus, but it's already established and it's an excellent food source. Pretty much you can use Nopales or opuntia in place of meat if you're out of meat. It's salty, a little bit salty, and it's you can cook it with eggs. Anywhere where you'd need meat in a dish, you can swap it out with this cactus and have something that will satisfy that texture, that desire for something like meat. Here's another hedge over here. So I know a lot of naturalists don't really like eucalyptus, but I'm a beekeeper and bees use eucalyptus to gather nectar in December, January. So I planted a eucalyptus tree right here, right next to the corner of the paddock, and I'll probably regulate its height. If it gets too tall, I'll probably top it. But I'm going to let it grow probably as tall as the lateral reach, and then I'll start maintaining it and maybe encouraging it to branch out and create shade over this corner of the paddock for the horse. Block the afternoon sun against that shed. Maybe it'll create a lot of spurs and a lot of buds, and it'll start really producing a lot of nectar in the winter. And eucalyptus grows fast, so when I planted this last, probably last summer, actually late summer, so just about 6 months ago probably. It was probably about knee high. Imagine knee high. And it grew a whole nother section right here that I cut off because I'm trying to train it to grow up. I don't want it to fork. I don't want two trunks. I want one trunk. So I've been pruning it all along the way. I pruned it there when it was younger. I pruned it here earlier this week. Something else, pruned it right there. But now it's going to be growing this main bed, cola, whatever you call it. Sorry for the terminology, you know. I got a rich past. But this main stalk right here is going to grow up, and it'll form into a tree. It'll straighten out quite a bit on its own. And then in these little spots here, this is pomegranate. I grow lots of pomegranate. There's an elderberry bush, pomegranate,